George, what's it been like for you? Your father's been in politics and has been a major figure in politics since you've been a small boy. What has it been like growing up with a father who's the governor of a state, who's one of the 10 most respected men in the nation, and is a presidential candidate?
Well, I think growing up in a political family, and especially having the same name of a very controversial figure at times, has had advantages and disadvantages, but overall I'm very proud of him and what he's done, and any comments that anyone has ever made to me about him, I think I take the comments as people talking about him more on a professional level, and I don't take any negative comments personally.
You mentioned you have the same name and you're pursuing a career in music. Do you think it's helped you or hurt you?
When you do put a record out, if, say, in some instances a program director disagrees with your father politically, he may be a little reluctant to play your record, but I think it's worked both ways. It's helped in places and hurt in others, but I'd rather for our product to be judged on the quality and talent on the record.
What was it like for you to see your father campaigning in 1972, to see him shot and wounded the way he was?
Well, of course, I traveled with him in 1972. I dropped out of university in March of 1972, and I enjoyed campaigning with him. I played at his rallies, and the crowds that he was drawing and the primaries he was winning, I think he definitely was having an impact. And to see him taken out of the race as he was, I think upset a lot of people, but he has the will to carry on, and I think he will continue that vein.
How do you feel about it personally, knowing that your governor's been shot, that your father's been shot once, that he may go back out in 1976 and he may risk, all the dangers involved in campaigning?
Well, I think he's paid a higher price than most have, but I think if he had it to do all over again, I think he'd do the same thing. I think he's that kind of man. Of course, what he'll do in 76 remains to be seen, but and what he'll do in 74 remains to be seen. But he's the kind of man that he believes in what he's doing, so the will is there, so I think he would do it again.
You wouldn't ask him not to?
No, I think there are too many people in this country that look to him for leadership, and he possesses the qualities that they're looking for, and I wouldn't deny them of that at all.
Do you think, other than the obvious physical changes that were brought about by the shooting, do you think your father's changed in any other way?
I think he's actually reached another level, a little higher level. Of course, he stays in a lot now. He's not able to get out like he did before. Of course, his work day is basically the same. He's up every morning at 7:30, and he eats breakfast. He has a pretty rigorous therapy program that he goes through, and he goes to the office till pretty late at night. So he's accepted the fact that he is paralyzed, and I think talking with his doctors and therapists, that's the main thing a man has to do, is accept the fact to be able to cope with it, and he's done that remarkably well.
Do you think it's changed his outlook on life at all? I know several years ago, I think 2 years ago, when you started at the university, we interviewed you and asked you if you were interested in politics at that time. Let us ask you the same question again. Do you think you may someday try to follow in your father's footsteps?
Well, I don't think I could ever follow in his footsteps. I don't think there are many people that could, but I'm very interested in politics and what he's been doing. Of course, when I was at university, I was a business major, and I dropped out to help him campaign and then stayed out after he was hurt to be with him. But I plan to go back to school in January. This time I'll be going to Huntington, and I've changed my major from business to history with a minor in political science. So I think instinctively there's something in me that points me in the political direction. Maybe if I'm not a participant, but I'm very interested in politics and the system.
You picking that noise up? Mr. Jackson, I realize that we're coming up to an election, and as I ask you this question, I know you have to take that into consideration, but could you describe for us what it is like to work for Governor Wallace, as honestly as possible in view of the fact that there is an election coming up? Trade the opportunity you've had to work for Governor Wallace both as a volunteer and now as his legal advisor for anything?
No, I wouldn't. As a matter of fact, it's, and I say this, I'm sure it applies to other people too, but it's a considerable sacrifice financially to be working in state government, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
There must be certain frustrations and stresses involved in the job. It's such an important position that you hold, and Governor Wallace is such an important man. Do you feel that these play on the people around him?
Well, yes, it does have some effect on all of us. I think the hours, for one thing, that has to be put in order to really get the job done. The second thing is the tremendous number of people who call on Governor Wallace for almost every conceivable thing, both within the state and out of the state. I think it's the fact that he is so well known, people have the impression that he can do anything. And of course his time is limited like any other extremely busy executive, and therefore a great deal of the work of necessity falls on other people who are his aides, and this puts a considerable workload on the people, and for that reason, I think it's the pressure is felt all around. You can't keep from it.
One observation I've made in the last week or so is that Governor Wallace does not demand loyalty; he just automatically gets it. Do you think that would be a fair assessment?
Oh, it certainly is. It goes along with what I said initially about the almost reverence that people hold Governor Wallace in. You don't have to do anything. I've seen people almost awestruck when they're in his presence. I think, again, I might put this little punch in. This is a typical characteristic, I think, of great people. I've seen others, too, but Governor Wallace, I think, is particularly illustrative of that point.
How would you assess now, over a year and a half later, how the shooting has affected Governor Wallace, both personally and in his ability to perform his responsibilities?
Well, first of all, I think the most significant thing that I have seen about Governor Wallace is his physical improvement. He is extremely busy. He sees many people. He handles a multitude of situations simultaneously. Examples of that, he could be discussing with a group of county commissioners or other public officials or other people, for that matter, on a subject, and call me in and ask me something which might not have anything to do with what they're doing because someone else had asked him about it. In other words, he can handle 3 or 4 different things simultaneously and never really lose track of where he was while he was talking with the other people. He's very, very adaptable. So I think as far as handling the multitude of problems of state government, I don't know how he could improve on it.
In 1962, when Governor Wallace was first elected, 1963, he was inaugurated. He vowed at that time that segregation would be the rule in Alabama. Things were over 10 years later now. Things have changed a lot. There is no segregation. Do you feel, and I'm not sure you'll be able to answer this, but do you feel that Governor Wallace's position in the early 60s was a pragmatic political position, or was it part of his attitude?
Well, I'm not certain that I'd be qualified really to say that. Now, the reason I give you is because I was not with him at that time. I was a supporter, but I was not connected with state government. The observations I think that people got generally, largely of course, was one that was carried by the various media. Whether you would say that was pragmatic or whether it was a personal political persuasion of his, I think he should answer that.
Is there anything you've known the governor for over 10 years? Is there anything you would like to tell us, some anecdote, something that's happened in the time you've been with him that might shed some light on this tremendously unique personality of his?
Yes, I think it's handling people problems. Without naming any names, I have seen him on occasion in person with other people and on the telephone, talking with people who are close associates, political friends, and personal friends, that from time to time when decisions have to be made, they may not be made in the favor of the person that he was talking to. And to be able to hear the ensuing conversations, as I say, on the phone and in person, between Governor Wallace and people who also have dynamic personalities, I think is one of the most interesting, humorous things that have happened to me, is being able to hear those conversations. In both cases, the parties would be trying to persuade each other that they really didn't make this decision based on any personal feeling or necessarily because they weren't friends. And this conversation would just go on and on and on as to who was the best friend of the other. And it was obvious that, to me at least, as a third-party onlooker, that both the governor and the other party to the conversation were each trying to convince the other of that. And it's when you see two past masters doing that, it's really humorous. And the governor is good at handling people problems. The best person I've ever seen in my life.
The rest of them got here yet, you want.
That's all right, good.
You feeling all right tonight?
Yes, sir.
What about me? I wonder if she does too. You all ain't about it, you doing right now. What you on 39?
Yes, sir.
You know what 12 is quarter. I'm taking you up to bed.
You like me driving up?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I'm glad so many of you are here today. I didn't know you'd have this many. I understood someone to talk with me, but the news media and the people of Alabama, that I would like to see the matter completely investigated, that I have offered every cooperation from the beginning. Anybody that's involved in any wrongdoing, as far as I'm concerned, they ought to be caught, and they ought to be dealt with, regardless of who they happen to be. And I understand the grand jury will meet, and there has been investigations ongoing by the examiners of accounts at the Attorney General's office, the local district attorney's office, and as far as I'm concerned, anybody involved in any wrongdoing certainly ought to be dealt with, and dealt with in the manner that the law calls for. I again want to emphasize that the governor's office has cooperated and offered to cooperate as far as this investigation is concerned, and that offer still stands. And I again emphasize that I don't want to, the fact that I've been in government a long time and been interested in good government, and I want to see anything that's not wrong ferreted out of government, because, as I've said a moment ago, it's too late in my governmental service to condone any illegal activity, if there is any, that has occurred. And as I said, my involvement in government, I paid a pretty high price for it, but I'm certainly not going to pay any price of not joining with those who are responsible for the investigation to see that justice is done in this matter. I'm doing what I can, yes, to ascertain but I am cooperating with those who are doing the investigation. I know there was a story some time ago about this office had suppressed an investigation by the examiners. Well, let me refer you to Mr. Steinick and ask him, and he'll tell you that this office has always fully cooperated with any investigation that he has made when he's called upon us to do so. And you can rest assured that not only do I not want anything suppressed, I want an investigation carried on as they are carrying it on. And I believe if you will question the officials who are carrying on the investigation, they will tell you that this administration has offered its fullest cooperation. But they are the investigative arm, and they have the resources at their command, and so they are well able themselves to do what investigation is necessary. We have to say this: I don't want to comment on what any particular individual, what any particular article says. Well, you mean that if you learn something about the alleged scheme, you're going to learn it through the investigators and not by inquiring yourself? What was the question? Will you conduct an inquiry yourself, or will you wait and allow the investigators to provide you with information? Well, we have the Attorney General investigating, we have the examiners of accounts, and we have the District Attorney's office. And I don't have the investigative people to do that. But investigating the investigators. Huh? You'd be investigating the investigators if you started doing that. So we've got the investigators investigating it, and who are charged with the law and doing it, and we are cooperating with them. And I don't know how you could have any better investigation than to have the Attorney General, the examiners of accounts, and the District Attorney's office investigate. It doesn't make any difference if a private company has a great number of people working for them and have gasoline pumps. Sometimes it's hard to keep some of the employees from taking some of the gasoline, regardless of what kind of system you have. So it addresses itself back as to who is involved and whether they're honest. If somebody's dishonest, they're going to violate the system regardless of what system you set up. But when they violate it and they're caught, then they have to pay the price. And I think many people have paid a lot of prices. And do I anticipate any change? Yes. Well, I haven't. You mean next year, you say? Well, within the next few months. The next few months. Any changes in your cabinet within the next...
Mr. Wallace, in view of the Watergate scandal and the resignation of former Vice President Agnew, in the 1976 presidential election, the American public, many people think, are going to be looking for one special characteristic in their candidate, and that is an honest man with no skeletons in the closet, a person that people can trust. Now, some newspapers in the state have tried to attack Governor Wallace through you. And not saying any of this is true or untrue, we're not passing any judgment on it or not. You think it affects him personally to see things said about him, things said about his family that aren't true in the newspaper?
Well, yes, it hurts him. He's human like anybody else. But in public life, you have to expect this. Everyone's not your friend, and someone out to do you in, and it hurts him. Yes, he has feelings like everyone else.
In your brother's early political career, you were very active in organizing the state for him in his first race for governor. Are you still that active in his politics today?
Bob, I'm not that active. In the beginning, I think one of the reasons why George lost the 58th governor's race that he was not organized. And between 58 and 62, we spent a great deal of time organizing this state county by county. And there's no necessity now for me to be involved as I have been in the past. I hope to help him on the national scene, organize the country. Because if the country's not organized, you can't get the delegates necessary for the nomination.
When in Governor Wallace's life, we know at the time he was at the University of Alabama. We know that by then he was actively considering politics as a career. But how early in his life did he really begin to look toward politics as what he was going to do in life? On May 15th, 1972, you saw your brother shot on television, probably, in a shopping center in Laurel, Maryland. What was your reaction at that time once you learned that he was going to survive and that he was going to live? Did you have, at that time, any feeling that, well, maybe this was it, maybe he ought to quit and get out, he's gone far enough?
No, I never gave it any thought that he should quit. Of course, George is being shot, coming on the heels of President Kennedy's assassination, his brother Robert's assassination, and Martin Luther King. First thing that crossed my mind was that this country is sick, and that it had to change. And I think that the country has changed and is changing since the assassination attempt on my brother. And whether or not that attempt had anything to do with the attitudes of people, I don't know, but I can feel that the country is changing back to some sanity and reason, notwithstanding Watergate.
How would you say your brother's recovery from the gunshot wounds has been, from his injuries has been? How
It's
would
a
you
miracle. It is.
Governor Wallace has, we've seen his sense of humor. He has a tremendous wit. He's a very funny man. Was he always like this? I know times were rough when you were young. Did he always have this sense of humor that he has today?
Well, I think he's always had it. George is kind of reserved with his humor, and it takes close friends around him for him to really put forth. Especially people who have passed away, like Billy Watson, could bring the best out in George's humor. And I think he had a great sense of humor when he will allow himself to take the liberty to be just plain George Wallace.
Can you give us a couple examples of that kind of sense of humor that you're talking about?
Well, Bob, most recent one, I guess, was when George Jr. signed the contract with MGM, and they had the hierarchy of the country western music field in Montgomery, and George spent 30 minutes to an hour discussing some old songs that even most of them had forgotten, like The Great Speckled Bird and Crash on the Highway, and songs that I've forgotten years ago. And I think he was really pulling their leg.
Governor Wallace has been known to partake of practical jokes on just about anybody around him, with a sense of compassion, but nevertheless, no one around him seems to be safe from an occasional practical joke. Have you ever been the go to one of these practical jokes?
I don't think so, Bob. George and he went off to the university at 17, and I went off the next year, so I've never really been around George that much, and I've never been the end of one of his jokes.
Have you seen a couple of these practical jokes, any of them you could tell us about?
Well,
Is that embarrassing?
I've seen several, but I don't recall any specific, but he liked to, as I mentioned a minute ago, Billy Watson was the butt end of a lot of George's practical jokes. Dr. Adams down at Troy, Glenn Curlew, Clarence Atkinson, and those are the kind of people that really catch the blunt end of George's jokes.
Fine, I reckon probably.
There's
Had been elected because, especially in the freshman class, you didn't have much time to get known, and in those days, the politics with the students were controlled to a large extent by the fraternities and sororities and the different party groups.
Yes,
in 1936, in the summer of 1936, he and I sold magazines, as college students often do, except for the fact that he was in high school and I was in college. We were in a group of 30 or 40 students. I believe he was the only one that was not a college student. And we sold magazines over most of the southern states. And that was the first time, 37 years ago, that I had occasion to know the governor. That's when I met him.
Then later, you were in law school at the University of Alabama, and Governor Wallace was an undergraduate, and as I understand it, you had a rooming house, and
Yes,
you waited tables in your boarding house. Isn't that true?
well, at that time, we did have a rooming house and a boarding house, and he and I worked together in this rooming house, and in serving meals.
Actually, it never happened. Even back in the days when the governor was at the university, he began then showing the potential of a great leader. He, as I understand it, used to draw people to him. He was like a magnet. What is it about George Wallace's personality, do you think, that attracts people to him?
I think there are several things. First, is utmost integrity and honesty, and then the lack of inhibition. He was in his sense of humor, and his concern for others. He's always been concerned for other people who had problems, who were less fortunate than he was. His greatest smile is he always enjoyed talking to people. I can remember very well when we would go to town, it'd take an hour to walk one block, and because he wanted to talk, he wanted to, and did, and the other people wanted to talk to him. So as he met people on the street, he just talked. It takes so long to became exasperated, really, because everybody he saw, he talked to him, and if you really heard of it. But he talked there, he enjoyed talking to people and being with people.
He also has an ability to put people at ease, even in his presence today. He's a presidential candidate and a governor. Do you think this is an important part of his personality? He can talk with a president of the United States or a truck driver.
I think that is an extremely important part of his personality. He does have the ability to make people comfortable that he's here. He has an empathy They feel that he's a part of them and they are part of him. There is that relationship or kinship, whatever you might call it, that I've never known anybody that didn't feel at ease and comfortable when they were talking with him.
You and the governor have been friends for over 35 years. How do you think the shooting has affected him beyond his physical disability? Do you think he's fully recovered from the emotional effects something like this would have?
I think that he has fully recovered as far as the mental part is concerned, and I think that he's even more compassionate now than he was before, although he's always been very compassionate. He has time now to reflect that he didn't have before, and to think, and as a consequence, he has more time to put to the business of the state than he's ever had. And as a matter of fact, as we all know, he's making more appearances now than he did before he got hurt.
So you do think then the shooting has had an effect on him other than the physical disability it is looking at?
I think it's made him more reflective and more thoughtful and more considerate of others.
We mentioned ago that one of the things that attracted people to the governor was his sense of humor. He has a very quick wit, very fast wit, and a good sense of humor. Can you give us any examples of this?
Well, I remember, for instance, you used to write a check occasionally, and as you know, on checks, you have a place down there that says 4. You put down 4 frivolities. And, I also remember an occasion when one of the students in the Newman House was having difficulty with his algebra and trigonometry, and he asked the governor if he could help, if he could give him any help on solving the problem. And the governor says, well, let me see, I'll take a look at it. So this young man, Goldie, gave him the problem with his tablets, and the governor started figuring. He calculated x, y, z squared to the nth power and to the 15th power. He looked over all of his papers that he had left in the tablet, and on the last line he came out that x was equal to 0. And then he says, Goldie, you see, all this work is for nothing. Because really what you ought to do is go to a good trade school or commercial arts school, and as a matter of fact, in later years, Goldie did exactly that, and he's been extremely successful in his new career. I do remember another occasion when I visited with him in his home one Christmas, and in those days we rode the train quite a bit because there weren't too many cars, and we decided to pose as French exchange students. We knew very little English, so we met other students on the train, and we had quite a conversation with them in broken English, and they wanted to know about our exchange. We exchanged students in this country, what we thought about the country, how was it as compared with France, and we had a great day about that.
Well, all right. So, Dr. Adams, Governor Wallace, when he's on the campaign trail, has several times attacked what he calls the pointy-headed intellectuals. Yes, Governor himself is quite an intellectual himself. He may not want people to know it, but he really is a fairly well-read man, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He is truly educated. Of course, what he was talking about he was talking about the pseudo-intellectuals. And he was also talking about the idea that A diploma is a poor excuse for an education. You can be educated without ever going to school, without ever going to college or university. Just because you have a degree doesn't really mean that you're educated. So I think that's what it has in mind. The pseudo intellectual. You have people with doctorate degrees that really don't have enough sense beyond the range. So the fact that a person can have more degrees than a thermometer, but you still doesn't mean that you're really educated. That's one indication that you are, but it's not necessarily the final indication.
I'm going to call you Peggy Sue, it's all right, because Miss Wallace will be outdated by the time we do the bring, and Mrs. Kennedy might pension. So, Peggy Sue, what is it like to be the daughter of such a famous man, the governor of Alabama and a presidential candidate, one of the 10 most respected men in the country?
Well, of course, I'm very proud of him, and we all are. And it's really been a privilege, you know, to have a father as governor and presidential candidate. And, it's a wonderful experience, and we're so proud of him because he's such a wonderful man. And I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun, and of course a lot of heartache sometimes too. But it's really been a wonderful experience.
How has it affected your life? The attention your family has drawn since you were a small child?
Well, of course, it's me in the limelight all the time is sometimes a disadvantage, and then of course it has its advantages and disadvantages, and the advantages always equal out the disadvantages.
What was your reaction the day your father was shot? Do you remember that day?
Yes, I remember very clearly because that morning I had gotten up very early to study for a test, and he was leaving that morning to fly to Maryland, and went into breakfast, and he came down for breakfast in his pajamas, and that seemed good. And when I got up from the table, I just went behind him, and I said, "Brother, we should stay at home. I know you can't, but I wish you would." And it was a strange day because I felt strange, and I know, you know, people can't realize it, but I felt something. You know, it was a beautiful day, and I could just feel something in the air. I didn't know whether it was good or bad. And I went to school, and when he was shot, the time he was shot, I was in a room by myself studying before my next class, and I went down to my class, and a friend of mine that was in a class with me came up to me and asked me, you know, haven't you heard? And I said, no. And she said, your father's been shot. And of course, I immediately, you know, I thought she was teasing me. And I said, you're teasing me? She said, no. She said, I thought you'd heard her. I thought maybe they had gotten in touch with him and he was all right. And I said, no. And then until probably an hour later, I really don't remember what happened. I fainted one time, you know. But it was a real odd feeling because I had been talking to a friend of mine right before that about violence in different places and different situations. And so it was very, very odd.
How do you feel today knowing that your father may go back out and campaign again?
I'm for it. I think he wants, that's what he wants to do, and I'm all for it.
There's so many sides of your father that people that the average public doesn't get to see. They see your father at a news conference or making a speech, or they'll read in the newspaper about your father, not all of which is true, and there are some malicious things printed about your father. What can you tell us about him that the average person doesn't know? Something simple about him that you think makes him very important to you.
He's a very touch. Just a minute.
Peggy Sue, the public sees only one side of your father for the most part, and that's his public life, his speeches, his press conferences. And they also read things about him in the newspaper, and some of the things that are printed about him are malicious things. What can you tell us about your father that the public doesn't know? Something, a personal side of him that you think might be important?
Well, he's a very sensitive man, and a very deep man, and very humorous. And of course, his humor in politics is different than his humor at home. But I guess I could say that he's a very sensitive man. I don't think a lot of people realize it, that he is a sensitive man.
You mentioned his humor at home being different. Could you give us an example of that?
Well, I think when I go upstairs to see him in the mornings, after therapy or something, he just jokes around and, just daughter to father and father to daughter jokes, not things you wouldn't repeat, but I mean things that
that only the two of you would understand.
Right, no one else would understand.
Yeah, how much have you got left? Peggy Sue, what was your reaction the day your father was shot in Laurel, Maryland?
Well, I was very surprised, of course, and shocked. And, when you have a father that is in politics, you sort of think, well, it could happen, someday. But I never really expected it to. And then when he was shot, of course, I didn't know any of the details, and I didn't care. All I wanted to know was he all right, and they couldn't tell me. And I think that was the worst thing, that they couldn't tell me. And then, of course, flying to Maryland that afternoon, we didn't know whether he would live or die, and I think that was the worst thing. But of course, I accepted it, and I figured that it might happen, because that's just the way that it is sometimes. But I was shocked and very surprised and very hurt.
That's over a year and a half behind you now. How do you think your father's come along? How do you think his recovery has been?
I think he's adjusted real well to being paralyzed. Of course, the family has had to adjust, and being a special education major, I've worked with handicaps, and I think it was probably easier for me to adjust the fact that he was paralyzed, putting aside all other aspects of it, than the other members of the family.
Do you all try to keep his spirits up? Is there a need for that, or?
Sometimes.
One, two, three, four.